Great. Welcome to Cabinet Outs. Thanks for being here, everybody. And we will start with Premier Tim Houston. So, Premier, we'll open up the floor to questions.
Premier, can you hear us?
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, go ahead, folks. We're good.
Thanks. Premier, one of the recurring concerns that have come out at the community meetings on fracking this week is whether or not a property owner who may have a claim staked to their property has the ability to say no to exploratory drilling on their property, or perhaps even having a going concern set up if it reaches that point. What can you say to members of the public who have that concern?
Well, there's pretty well-defined property rights in Canada and certainly in Nova Scotia, so those rights will be respected. I'm not aware of any situations like that where we're going to expropriate take people's property or something. I'm not aware of that. I'm not hearing that. Right now, we're just trying to understand. We know a lot about the resource, what's possible with the resource. We're working with Dalhousie to really understand the science, working with the industry to understand the techniques that are the modern techniques. So that's a process that's happening right now. But I'm certainly not aware of anything like that, Michael.
Okay, and then the other thing I was wondering about was just in terms of understanding the timing of the process. Dal has sort of outlined the various steps and measures that it's following. When it comes to exploratory drilling, though, assuming that we get to that point, does your government have a veto over that, or is it your view that exploratory drilling would be part of the process to reaching the point to ultimately deciding whether or not the industry is permitted to operate at a commercial level in Nova Scotia?
Yeah, it's certainly a process. I mean, there's been some drilling in the past, not much, but we have an onshore atlas. We know we have a lot of kind of expectations of what the resource is. But this is an incredibly competitive world. I mean, talking to developers and major producers in other parts of Canada and certainly other parts of the world as well, there's lots of drill sites, lots of drill opportunities. So they're looking at what we may have here, and then trying to understand what's possible. But underlying all of that, incredible demand for energy security, incredible demand for sustainability. Right now, we're using natural gas in Nova Scotia. Some of that's coming from Australia, if you can imagine. We have it underfoot here. Most of it is coming. It's all coming through the United States. We're completely dependent on the United States for our natural gas at the moment. But some of that is actually originating in Alberta or West. We have it here underfoot. So we need to understand what's possible in terms of developing it. And I can say to Nova Scotians, if we can develop it safely and sustainably here, their energy costs could come down. We're paying almost $15 a unit for natural gas here. It's 2 or 3 in Alberta. So imagine the impact that can have on people's energy bills. Imagine that can have the impact that can have on economic development. There are so many moving parts of this. There are so many potential positives. We owe it to Nova Scotians to have an adult discussion. We owe it to Nova Scotians to understand the science, to understand what is possible, and we're working with Dalhousie to do just that. And I think these are questions to be answered. I understand that there is a cohort of people who have concerns, environmental concerns, safety concerns, who have concerns, and those are fair. There is another cohort of Nova Scotians who have concerns about their jobs, about the economic prospects. They are tired of working in this industry in other parts of the world and raising their children 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. That is also a legitimate cohort that deserves to be heard as well. So, but both of those cohorts are to be respected in this process, and that is what is happening. So this is a time right now where our province has a potential opportunity, and we have to understand and pursue that potential opportunity. There will be lots of questions along the way, and there'll be lots of things to discuss. That is what we are doing. That is what needs to be done, and we need to allow that process to unfold.
A judge struck down last year's woods ban, declared that the banning people from traveling in the woods was unconstitutional. I'm wondering what you make of the decision and what you plan to do now that decision's been rendered.
first off, I mean, most Nova Scotians will remember what we were going through last summer. Incredible drought conditions, fire risk was incredibly high across the entire province. People were evacuated, they were losing homes, there was fear of loss of life. Like, this was an incredibly stressful time for Nova Scotians. So we did as a government, I did as a premier, what I thought was necessary to keep people safe, to support our first responders. Our firefighters were completely stretched at that time. There was fires, they were really stressed. Our resources were stressed, and they were asking for support. So we did what we thought was necessary, and I certainly did what I thought was necessary as premier to support our firefighters, to keep people safe, to keep property safe, and that was the woods ban. That was completely appropriate in those circumstances, in that moment, based on the information that I had. Now, months and months later, almost essentially a world away in the wintertime, a judge has decided that maybe something different should have been done. That judge, I respect that judge's decision, but I respectfully also acknowledge that we were dealing with information in an emergency situation, and we did what we thought was necessary at that time.
Will you appeal the decision?
I don't think so. I'm not aware of an appeal being prepared. It's kind of come and gone, and as we move forward, I, as premier, will certainly look at circumstances that are in front of me at any given moment in time, and I will always do what is necessary to keep people safe, to keep property safe every single time. We'll make that decision. We'll do that again if necessary.
The decision spoke about how there was...
If I could just one question here, Jeff. The decision from the judge said this was a process failure from the government. The charter rights of ordinary citizens weren't considered in this at all. So given that, how do you change your approach through perhaps, the next future emergency when you're considering putting in broad emergency powers like this?
We'll look at the decision, but I'll always look at the facts that are in front of me in an evolving emergency and do what is necessary to keep people safe.
But the charter rights of ordinary citizens weren't part of that decision. Will you change your process?
That was the judge's opinion and the judge's ruling, and I respect that. But we always consider the rights of individuals, always, every single time. But we always look for ways to keep people safe. Public safety may not be the primary consideration of others, but it is the primary consideration of me as premier and of our government.
Your Pictou County Council is asking for you to order a third-party analysis of possible alternatives to the gas plants that the grid operator wants to build. Will you do that?
It's actually how we got here. The independent energy systems operator is an incredible addition to energy in Nova Scotia. It is an independent third party that will kind of keep watch, for lack of a better word, on some of the decisions that Nova Scotia Power makes about the grid. The person running that is nationally recognized, internationally recognized. Like, this is a quality organization run by quality people, and it is exactly their job to be that independent party who looks at what is necessary. So that's already happened, and that was their decision that this was required. And you have to think about why it was required, because there was incredible energy demands, incredible energy needs to make sure that the system is always there when people need it, that we always have the electricity and the energy we need. So that's what their job is. And I guess the third point I would make on this is the more we put renewables onto the system, the more we want to put renewables on the system, and that's what we want. But the more we want to do that, we absolutely need these other quick fire sources of energy as backup. Because, of course, the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine, all those things that people always talk about. So you need to be able to step up in a quick moment, and that is through natural gas. So I have great confidence in the independent energy systems operator and the work they're doing and the work they will do on behalf of Nova Scotians and the process that they followed to reach this decision. That's a thoughtful group. They've already done what the council's asking, and I'm looking forward to working forward with the independent operator going forward.
Battery facilities are also a backup to renewables. Why do you think that batteries are not suitable alternatives to the gas plants?
Oh, it's not. No, it's not what I think or don't think. I mean, obviously, batteries have a part to play. We're making incredible investments in battery technologies in this province. That's happening as well. There is any number of technologies at any given point in time, but it's it's my job to listen to the experts on that, and that is an independent organization. And I have great confidence in their work, and they have, you can direct that question maybe more appropriately to them as to what alternatives they looked at and how they did that assessment. And I'm sure they'll be happy to talk to you about that. But from my perspective, I have great confidence in the process they followed and great process in the decision they made. Great confidence in the decision they made.
Premier, Alberta's moving to permanent daylight savings time. They're following BC. Is it something you're thinking about here?
I'm interested in it, but it's not something that Nova Scotia would do on its own. This is always something that we've said we'd have to do with the region. So it can be a discussion at the Council of Atlantic Premiers, and it will be, I'm sure, maybe even a discussion at the Council of the Federation over the summertime meetings. But look, I'm interested in it. I see the pros and cons of it, but Nova Scotia would not do that alone in terms of the region.
Premier, yesterday the offshore regulator said it needs more consultation before it can issue calls for bid for the offshore wind projects. I'm just wondering how you think about that, and is that a setback for Wind West?
Not a setback, part of the process.
Said that with regards to onshore gas exploration, you need to have adult conversations. You took to Facebook about anti-fracking protesters that attended that information session in Windsor. Environmental advocates have said that they don't feel heard by your government. I'm wondering why you put that statement out and shared that video.
No, we listen closely to all voices. I think I've definitely showed that over my time as Premier. There's been lots of examples of getting more information and making a different decision. We always listen carefully and a great respect for the views and the perspectives of Nova Scotians. There are competing perspectives on this. But I think, working with Dalhousie to have public consultations, to have discussions so people can get their questions answered in a respectful way, I think that's an important part of the process. We'll be guided by the science on this. The science is what we will follow. There are many experts in the room who can answer questions that people have, and I think they should have an opportunity to do that. And I look forward to the future consultation processes as this moves forward.
David Wheeler is probably an expert on these issues. He lambasted both the province and Dalhousie yesterday for the process, essentially saying that Dalhousie has abandoned academic rigor on this. How do you respond to that charge?
I'm not aware of that. My understanding was Mr. Wheeler has his own history for sure. I think he ran politically for the NDP. He had his own issues with working with an academic institution in Nova Scotia, and I'm not even sure he's a resident in Canada anymore. I'm not sure. But look, I have great respect for Dalhousie. That doesn't mean everybody does, and maybe he doesn't, but I certainly do, and we're happy to work with him.
We do have one question just quickly on the phone, then we'll come back to the room. Barb Sweet with the Pictou Advocate. Barb, are you there?
Hello, sorry about that. Can you hear me okay?
Hey, Barb.
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
Barb,
we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, so my question was sort of asked in the room, but as a follow-up to it, there's an awful lot of people in Pictou County who are concerned about the peaker plants, and obviously there's the argument that we need it. But Premier, what would you say to the people of Pictou County who, especially in Salt Springs, Marsdale, concerned about the salmon population, concerned about their own wells? What would you say to them? As perhaps, what would you say to them to try to ease their minds?
Yeah, so it's like these are good people that have concerns, and it's my dad used to have the expression that if you're not nervous, you're not ready. Of course, it's natural to have concerns. It's natural to have questions. And I would just say that, we will be, as a government, guided by the experts and guided by the science. And I would just say, we've had some of the open houses on that. We're happy to answer questions that people have and try to alleviate their concerns. Also knowing that sometimes it just won't be possible to alleviate concerns because these can be emotional discussions too. But we care about this province. We care about the water. We care about the salmon. We care about the air. We just try to make decisions that are in the best interest based on the best science of what is possible to do safely and sustainably. So there's lots of science on this, and I would just say to people that, as Premier, I always raise questions myself about this stuff, but there are experts that can answer some of their questions, and we're happy to facilitate that.
Well, in your mind, is this a done deal, though?
Well, it's a process. So we have the independent energy systems operator. They have experts. They have a lot of analysis. So they've done some of that. There's been some open houses and some consulting, and we'll continue to answer questions that people may have as we move forward. The need for energy is real and significant. And if we want to put renewables on the system, which, many people do, if we want to add renewables to the system, then we need to change the system over time so that it can accept those renewables and be ready to respond when the renewables just aren't there because the wind's not blowing or something. So it's all part of moving forward, but moving forward, in a safe, sustainable way. And it's okay to have questions about that. And we can work with those people through their questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Armstrong sent a letter to the Mi'kmaq chief saying if we're going to have a productive meeting, we want to see some financial records or ties to the industry there. Have you had a chance to meet with Mi'kmaq leaders since then? Or do you have a date? Obviously, they want to get an open meeting with you.
Yeah, I think what they're trying to do is just kind of understand kind of who's who at the table. So I think he was asking very specifically for some disclosures of, whether the people that we would be in meetings with are actually have a financial interest in some of these cannabis shops. I think that was the question. I don't know. I know the question was asked, but I'm not sure of the current status. But certainly, Minister Armstrong, Minister Martin, others are willing to meet and wanting to meet. But I think it's fair too to ask kind of where everyone's coming from.
Time for one more question.
Premier, S&P Global confirmed Nova Scotia Power's credit rating yesterday, in part because they thought that the securitization plan was going to go ahead this year. Now, you've been very clear in recent weeks about what your thoughts were on the securitization. I just want to make sure, I just want to give you an opportunity. You haven't changed your opinion on that, have you?
I haven't seen anything that would require me to change my opinion yet.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Premier.
Okay, thanks, everyone.